Is a trustee responsible for what their financial authorities do with trust money? The answer to that question can be yes. There's a multi-trillion-dollar industry out there. I call it the donor class, the fiduciary, the professional class over here that is charged with taking trillions of dollars of Americans, investing them, and then doling it out under the terms of trusts or probate and estates. There's entire groups of industries out there: CPAs, accountants, financial advisors, even attorneys. And there's a trap out there for all of these people on the donor side of things: the trustee, the personal representative, all the fiduciaries that are working there right there with them. And it's a trap that not nearly enough people talk a lot about, because there's this fiduciary obligation that's very complex and can lead even very responsible and well-meaning trustees to trip themselves up if there's any breach of the duties at all. Now, I'm going to talk about what those obligations are. It's Florida Statute 736.0804 and 736.0807. Those two statutes work together and put these very specific duties on this entire donor class over here. But honestly, what happens for the poor trustee that's sitting there, again, even acting one in good faith, is if the professional class, the attorneys, the CPAs, all this other stuff, don't do what they're supposed to do in terms of really educating that trustee, the trustee's walking into a trap. Again, even the well-meaning one. And don't even get me started with the whole do-it-yourself revocable trust situations. And honestly, so many of these financial institutions and advisors are wholly unqualified to be producing revocable trusts, and yet they do it all the time. But let's talk about what, and that sets up all kinds of liability for the trustee. Let's talk about exactly what the statute says. Under 736.0804, a trustee shall invest and manage trust assets as a prudent investor would by considering the purposes, terms, distribution requirements, and other circumstances of the trust. Really important thing. The language in the statute, that's the law, it says shall. You shall invest. The second one is that you have to manage it prudently. And for the, by and large, in the professional class over here, they're providing good advice. It is being managed prudently. But let's face it, 2026, things are getting scary. Things are getting freaky. But as an example, even if you as a trustee had invested all your money in Bitcoin, made good money there, and you think it's a good idea, you can't take the trust money and do it in Bitcoin just because you thought it was prudent with your own money. No, that would violate the prudent investor rule, and you could get hammered for it. The second part of this here is delegation in the trap. This is another one that no one talks about. Florida Statute 736.0807, a trustee may delegate investment and management functions that a prudent trustee of a comparable skills could properly designate to an agent. And here's the deal. Again, if you're a sophisticated, responsible guy, you're dealing with a big name company, everything's fine. But these duties about selecting and managing who the agent is are very tricky. Let's talk about what the statute says. 736.0807. In delegating investment and management functions, a trustee shall exercise reasonable care, skill, and caution in selecting an agent, establishing the scope and terms of the delegation, and periodically reviewing the agent's actions in order to monitor the agent's performance and compliance. Read those three things carefully because they're very specific. What often happens, however, though, is, the uncle's over here. It's maybe the trust advisor, the investment advisor the uncle's been using on his own stuff for years, but he's gotten into a file and forget mentality. And that may be fine for his own portfolio, but it's absolutely a violation of his duties as a trustee to not actively manage and supervise it on behalf of the trust for which he has a fiduciary duty to look after all these little ducklings over here, the beneficiary class over there. The practical reality is this. This stuff is really specific, and it's a trap for lots of trustees sitting over here. And I'm afraid it's a trap that everybody in this professional class has betrayed their obligations to the trustee to warn them about all this stuff. I say it in every one of these. I'm going to say it again. You do not have to be the trustee just because your brother, your mom, your dad, your whatever wanted you to. And if you assume that responsibility as a trustee, you better think long and hard about making sure you're paid properly and that you're working with proper advisors that give you all of the details that I'm talking about in here. Because if you don't, everybody over here on this beneficiary class may come looking for you, and that's what this is all intended to avoid. Everybody's got to be looking at this stuff, understanding those violations on both sides of it. If you have concerns about this as a trustee or on the beneficiary side, so much better to be talking about this stuff now rather than when the inevitable happens. And what this real warning is about is we know that line's going downward. Crash is happening. When that happens, you do not want to be that trustee that's been sitting there. And all of a sudden, you're vulnerable for all these little ducklings in the beneficiary class coming after you and looking over your shoulder, second-guessing everything that you did.